Hello! Thank you for joining me for my talk entitled Launching into ARISS here at the September 2022 QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo. I am Evan, KC8EK, and VA3EKL. Have you ever thought about the possibility of hosting an astronaut contact at your school through the ARISS program? Whether you're interested in considering a contact, just starting to work through the process, or if you've never thought about this opportunity but think that it might be good for your school, this presentation is for you. My own experience with the ARISS program started in March 2021 when I filled out an application for the Spring 2022 contact window for my school, Bellefontaine High School in Bellefontaine, Ohio. I had recently founded the BHS Amateur Radio Club and was looking for exciting opportunities and activities to get started. When I saw the ARISS program, I knew that students would be really excited in talking with an astronaut and saw that this might increase club membership. And initially planned to have somebody else revise the application the next time, expecting it to get declined. I was surprised that ARISS selected my school. After being notified in May that my school was selected, I gathered my team, and together, we spent nearly a year preparing for an April 2022 contact and organizing related activities for students and teachers. It involved tremendous amounts of work, but the end result was well worth it. It was a joy to participate in this program, and I hope that this presentation will be useful in helping you to get there at your school. It is important to remember that the ARISS program is highly competitive. Each year, less than 20 organizations in the United States are selected to host a contact. I can't promise that your application will be accepted, but by submitting a strong application, you will certainly increase your chances of hosting a contact. There are 2 opportunities each year to submit a proposal. If you aren't successful at first, then you can modify your proposal and try again as many times as you would like. First, you'll want to spread awareness of the application. You'll be working with several organizations and people throughout the process, so make sure to engage them. These include groups such as the local ham club, the local school, any community service organizations, and any other community partners you wish to involve. If you are affiliated with a school, you should inform various teachers and administrators. This is a big project, and you want to make sure that everyone is on board. If you aren't part of a school, you should contact some teachers to gauge interest. Once you have your school team together, start reaching out to the amateur radio community. It is a good idea to involve your local radio club. They will be the main technical team involved in the project. Even if your club doesn't have much experience with satellite communications, somebody in the club probably knows somebody else with the knowledge. You'll want to choose a group to manage media communications. These are the core groups, but feel free to expand as you wish. Once you get your team together, you can start working on the application. Feel free to have as many people working on it as you like. What matters most is that each task gets done when necessary. In practice, you want to have at least one person who keeps track of things that need to be done and make sure that the project stays on schedule. I'll describe completing the application for organizations in the United States, though the process will be similar in other parts of the world. Every 6 months, a proposal window opens, giving you 6 weeks to fill out an application to host a contact a year in the future. As I prepare this presentation, the next proposal window opens October 1st, 2022 for the fall 2023 contact window. The application does not significantly change for each window, so if you are excited about having a contact and want to get a head start, you can start working through the proposal based on the form for a previous application window. On the ARISS website, we'll click on the Educational Contacts tab. This is how the site looks as I record this in August, but it may change by the time you are watching this. Now we can see the application I completed for my school. The application is periodically revised, but the information required doesn't change much. This application is included as part of the supplementary materials for the presentation. You are welcome to use the application I filled out as a guide while you work on yours. Looking at the first page, we see some introductory information, including a link to the proposal guide. This is an in-depth guide to the ARISS program and the application process and will prove useful to you. At the bottom, we have the contact window dates as well as the deadline. Section 1 is for contact information. The lead host organization is your school or community organization. Below that are entries for your contact persons and coordinators. Ideally, they should all be different people. The last entry is for the names of people submitting commitment letters. Section 2 is for scheduling considerations. First, you will want to specify the dates and times that don't work for you. Providing a calendar can be helpful. Try to be as flexible as possible, because organizations that are more flexible are more likely to be scheduled. You'll also specify the preferred times and your time zone. Next, you'll be able to select a preference for contact type. A direct contact involves using a radio station and antenna at the premises, while a telebridge contact uses a phone link to a remote amateur who makes the contact with their equipment. Your preference will not affect the strength of your application, but you should prepare for the possibility of needing to use a different configuration than initially planned. Section 3 is your education plan. Be as thorough as possible without exceeding word limits. Although I don't know exactly what set my school application apart from many others, I suspect that this section is the single most important part of the application. By filling out this section well, you will show the ARISS committee that you understand why the ARISS program is a good fit for your school, as well as demonstrate that you have a well-developed plan. Since the application is included for your review, I'll just point out a few highlights from this section. In question 1C, it can be helpful to give tangible examples of how your mission statement is put into action. For example, I listed some extracurricular activities to show how the school provides for a quality education. Question 3 involves talking about your partnerships. The people and organizations mentioned here should write letters of commitment. Question 4A is where you'll describe your planned activities. Remember that what you plan to do and what you actually do may be very different. Even if you don't get to everything, your work toward these activities will prove useful. Something that we found to be particularly valuable was interviewing a couple of alumni to learn about their experiences at SpaceX and NASA. We also had success in interactive art projects for students. While you should not expect to be moved forward in the application process, you should be prepared to do your activities if you are selected. For question 4C, I would recommend having students develop the questions they will ask. Even if their questions are not selected, this is a good way for them to get involved. For question 6, you can use whatever procedure you use when another event is rescheduled. Question 7 is important. One of the goals of the ARISS program is to provide an educational opportunity for students to learn about spaceflight and radio communications. ARISS wants you to be able to show that the program will have an impact on students. Section 4 is your media plan. A strong application shows that you are planned and prepared to involve your local community. When you decide to contact the media is up to you, but it is essential to notify them after your organization is selected and in the weeks leading up to the contact. You don't need to tell ARISS who you plan to contact, but it can be helpful to have a list of who you might contact. Section 5 involves your letters of commitment. Every organization mentioned in your proposal should have their spokesperson submit a letter of commitment. This is a letter in which the individual affirmed their support and commitment to your organization in hosting the contact if selected. Think of it like a letter of recommendation for your organization. For each group, you should send a formal cover letter clearly stating what you would like them to do for you. You can also include a sample letter to help them know what to write. There is nothing you need to put in the section on the application, but you will need to attach the letters on your application. Section 6 is a sample timeline. Make sure that this part is well thought out. I would recommend set up several days prior to your contact and time for final equipment checks that day to ensure that everything is working properly. You should also invite the community members and dignitaries to the event in the days and weeks preceding the contact. Though this section is not a commitment, you'll want to have a pretty good idea of what you will do. So you've completed your application, reviewed it with others, and you're ready to submit. What now? Once you're sure you are finished, gather together your materials, your proposal, your organization's calendar, and your letters of commitment. Send these materials to the ARISS email address, which is on the proposal form and the ARISS website. You should get a confirmation email within a day or two. In 6 to 8 weeks, you will receive an email from the ARISS Education Committee informing you of their decision. If you aren't selected to move forward in the process, don't worry. You can retry as many times as you wish. If you are selected, this is when the fun and the work really begins. At this point, you are not guaranteed a contact with the ISS, but assuming you complete all the necessary steps and NASA's availability lines up with yours, it is highly likely that the contact will occur. There are a lot of things that need done, so this is where it is helpful to delegate tasks to each of your coordinators. Feel free to expand your team to share the workload if necessary. The first step is to submit an equipment plan detailing how you plan to set up the equipment to support your upcoming contact. Even if you aren't an expert in satellite communication, don't worry. Within a month of the congratulatory email, you will be assigned a technical mentor and an educational ambassador to help you along the way. In most cases, they have been involved in planning an ARISS contact at their school in the past, and they know what needs to be done. You will also be invited to an informational webinar where you'll learn more about the program and your responsibilities. The equipment plan has several parts. Your technical team, in consultation with your technical mentor, will write this up. You have the option of a direct or telebridge contact. I would recommend doing a direct contact if you think you can support it. The chart here is fairly straightforward. On the bottom of the page, we have a place for your call sign and radio coordinator. For the call sign, you have several options. You can use the club call of the radio club, your personal call sign, or even better, use your school radio club call sign. You will likely want your radio coordinator to be a representative of your partner club. The most important part is your plan for the radio equipment. For the sake of redundancy, you are expected to have a primary and backup radio. ARISS provides a recommended ground station plan that will outline the types of transceivers, power supplies, antennas, amplifiers, cables, and other types of equipment you will need. Use this as a reference when making your own plans. Our local radio club was able to borrow the antennas and radios needed for our contacts. Remember that your technical mentor is here to help you. While that's happening, you should be working on your press outreach. Attached is a sample release. While the information you can provide to the community will be limited at this time, it is still helpful to inform your community of this exciting opportunity. Having a web presence can be very helpful. This can be as simple as a few pages on your organization's website, or you can host something on a separate website. In our case, we put in a dedicated section for the ISS contact on the club website. Whatever you decide, having someone with web development skills can be very helpful. You'll want to include basic information, as well as any press releases and news stories. Having a dedicated location where new information is posted will help people learn more about your work. While all this is going on, you can get to work on your education plan. While the exact details will vary, you will almost certainly want to compile lesson plans for teachers. There are a number of pre-made lesson plans about radio and spaceflight. Some of the best are from the ARRL and NASA, but there are lots of other options. Teachers are often quite busy and may be reluctant to integrate a lesson plan into their curriculum. There are several ways you can make this easier for them. Focus on lesson plans that are easy to implement. Also, separate the lessons into categories according to age level and subject. Something that worked well for us was compiling the resources on the website in a dynamic format. By selecting from the various drop-downs, we can select the lessons we want. Once you have your lesson plans finished, it's time to start drafting emails. Feel free to use a general template for the email body. For best results, you should consider sending a personal email to every teacher in your school district. This may require access to the directory. While sending dozens, even hundreds of emails can be tedious and labor-intensive, teachers are more likely to respond if they receive a message addressed solely to them. Take note of the teachers who respond and thank them for being willing to participate. These teachers will be a vital part in making the ARISS experience a success. An important thing is to not set your expectations too high. In my school district of 250 teachers, I received about 8 to 10 responses from interested teachers. Don't get discouraged, because this is a very typical response rate. The good news is that the teachers who do respond typically are very interested and will share that passion with their students. Early in the process, you'll want to prepare well. You'll want to send emails, make phone calls, and prepare calendars and resources to make sure you're ready for each planned activity when it comes. The more you have prepared now, the less you'll have to do later, and the better your events will go. Once school is in session, you'll want to think about creating questions and selecting students to ask them. There are multiple ways to go about this, but I recommend you have students create questions they can then ask. We did this by having students submit questions with their student number on them. A committee involving radio club members and select staff reviewed the questions, selecting the 10 best questions and the students who wrote them. When the contact comes around, there will be 10 students, each with 2 questions. You probably won't get to all the questions, so this makes sense that each student gets to ask at least 1 question. Once you decide on the students, you'll want to submit their names and questions to ARISS. This will help the astronaut prepare. As you are working through this process, it is very helpful to see what others have done. Your mentors will be able to tell you about their experience. It is a good idea also to look at the information that other clubs that have made contacts have on their websites. I would also recommend watching some previous contacts. There are dozens available on YouTube. Over time, you will learn more about your contact details. About 4 to 6 months before your contact, you will know the most likely week for the contact. About 4 weeks before the contact, the exact week will be confirmed. You will then be given a list of dates and times. These consist of all the times the space station will be passing over your location for at least 10 minutes, excluding any times that don't work for the astronauts or you. You'll decide on a time, announcing it to the news media as the contact approaches. By this point, your activities will have been well underway. Keep these going as the contact approaches, because you're almost at the end. The day of the contact is by far the most interesting one. By this point, you've put in months of hard work, and it's all about to pay off. All of the educational activities have been completed. The media and the dignitaries will arrive. Make sure that your live stream is ready to go and your physical audience is present. We had a display of space-related artwork to view as the audience entered the auditorium. After some opening remarks from our school club members, we showed our interviews with alumni in the space industry. After some welcomes and thank yous, we gave a brief overview of the events to come. ARISS provides a video you can use that gives an overview of the contact's underlying technology. You should also include a video introducing the astronauts. Together, all of these videos will help inspire your audience. By this point, the ISS will only be a few minutes away. This is a perfect time for the person who will be making the contact to come forward. The European Space Agency provides a live map of the ISS location that you can display. While your audience watches the map, this person can explain the contact process because it can seem confusing at first. Make sure that your students are ready. A couple of minutes before the space station comes over the horizon, you will start calling the space station. Make sure to be patient, because it will take several tries to receive a response. I know I certainly was nervous watching the start of transmission. Since you've thoroughly tested your apparatus, you shouldn't have any issues, but you do have a backup setup in case something goes wrong. Eventually, you'll get to the moment you've been waiting for. The moment when you get a response from your astronauts. This can feel truly miraculous, given the difficulty of satellite communication. Once contact has been established, the operator will ensure the astronaut is ready for questions. After this, you can bring the first student forward to ask their question. The communication style can seem a bit awkward if you've never done it before. Each student states their name, then their question, finishing with "over." This is necessary to make the start and end of each transmission clear, and is standard ARISS protocol. The entire process is easier to understand if you see it. Here's a video of the first part of our contact.
November Alpha 1, Sierra Sierra. This is Whiskey 8, Bravo Charlie Sierra, calling for a scheduled school contact. Do you copy? Over.
November Alpha 1, Sierra Sierra has you loud and clear. How me? Over.
My name is Simon, and we are talking to you today from Bellefontaine, Ohio. Thank you for taking your time to talk with us. November Alpha 1, Sierra Sierra from Whiskey 8, Bravo Charlie Sierra. Are you ready for questions?
I am ready for questions.
My name is Elliot. How long does it take to get used to gravity after being in space? Over.
Hi, Elliot. It usually takes a day or two to start feeling sort of back to normal, but then it takes several weeks to kind of build back up your strength and learn how to use your body again. We kind of learn to ignore our vestibular systems up here, so the signals in your inner ear that tell you how your body's oriented or if it's accelerating, our brain kind of cuts those out because they're not useful to us in microgravity, but when we get home, those are really important for balance and controlling our bodies, so we have to retrain that system and those connections in our brains before we start to feel better.
And here's a couple of my favorite questions and answers.
My name is Kyle. What is the protocol if depressurization occurs on the ISS? Over.
Hi, Kyle. We have lots of procedures to help us deal with that if it happens. If it's a small leak, which it probably would be, we would have time to search for where it's coming from and even patch it. But if it was a really big leak that was happening fast, we would go straight to our spaceships and detach from the space station to evacuate, just so that we can stay safe. Over.
My name is Jocelyn. Who inspired you to go to space? Over.
Jocelyn. I was inspired to go to space by Kay Heyer, who was an astronaut during the shuttle era, and she went to the Naval Academy just like I did. And I got to meet her one time and heard her story, and that really inspired me to want to go myself. And I had some awesome mentors and coaches that encouraged me to apply, and I did. Over.
Pretty amazing, isn't it? As an organizer for the ARISS program at my school, I had a very good idea for what to expect, yet I was still amazed that I was watching an actual astronaut make contact with my school. I can't even imagine what the experience was like for the students watching, to say nothing of the students asking questions of the astronaut. Once the day of the contact is done, there are a few more steps you should take. First, you'll want to send a press release to any press outlets that were not able to attend the event. In our experience, there were members of the media who had planned to attend, but had another story happen right then, so they missed the contact. However, they ran a nice story about the contact from the information we sent them. A couple of weeks after the contact, you'll receive a link to a post-contact report. Make sure to fill this out, because ARISS wants to know what was learned from the project. It's likely you'll have some students who have shown interest in amateur radio. Make sure to follow up with these students and encourage them to pursue their interest. These are the basic steps involved in the months-long ARISS preparation process. Of course, your exact details will vary based on what you choose to do and on various factors outside of your control. There are a few important lessons we learned from our experience with ARISS, and hopefully you'll find them useful. Something important that our team learned was that we couldn't do everything. For example, we'd originally planned to hold an expo on the day of the event. When the time came around, we realized that COVID cases in the area were too high to justify an event like this. You will certainly run into obstacles, and not everything can go according to plan. Another thing our team learned was that even though hosting an ARISS contact can be quite daunting, it is very manageable when broken down into small steps. If your team lead divides tasks properly, each person will only need to focus on one part of the process at a time, making it so much easier. Perhaps the most important lesson for those of you watching is that you don't have to have everything figured out. When I filled out the ARISS application, it was mainly something that I did out of curiosity, thinking that somebody else would finish the job later. When I got the email about our application being accepted, it was quite overwhelming. There I was, just a student, only licensed for a couple of years and with no background in satellite communications, and I was supposed to lead a team to make contact with an astronaut. Nevertheless, we managed to get it done. Given time and hard work, we were able to figure out what we needed to do, and there were numerous resources available to us along the way. Even now, though, I still often wonder how we were able to do it. Really, all you need to do ARISS is the willingness to work hard as part of a team. Anyone can do it. Administrators, teachers, radio operators, students. You can be a team lead or just part of a team. If you're here today, chances are nobody at your school or organization has thought much about this opportunity. I encourage you to be the person who starts that conversation and helps bring this wonderful opportunity to hundreds or thousands of people. Thank you for joining me for this presentation today. I hope that ARISS is as rewarding for you as it was for me. If you have any questions, feel free to hop onto the Q&A session right after this. Hope to see you there. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me and for this presentation launching into ARISS. Really excited to have you all here, and so yeah, this is the start of our Q&A session. Just feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll answer them as they come. All right, so we have a question from Joshua of what type of antenna do you recommend to contact the ISS? So as far as answering that, it's so the ISS is kind of rotating as it goes throughout space. So what you want is some sort of antenna that has a circular polarization. So often it'll be like a circular polarized beam antenna. So it ended up being this fairly long thing. It was this antenna made up of a bunch of cross beams and kind of like a circular Yagi of sorts that it was maybe about 5-6 feet long, and then you take the antenna and you just aim it at the ISS as you go, and from there you'll be able to keep in contact with them. And that's something that, especially as you work through you'll have a technical mentor who will be able to help you with that, who could maybe even help you find the right place to get that antenna. So you definitely don't need to figure that all out yourself. Hopefully that answers your question. Anybody else got some questions? It can really be anything of about the process or anything like that. So, okay, looks like we've got another one here. So is there a schedule of when the astronauts will be on the air? So just to clarify, do you mean like as far as for the ARISS contacts, or just in general? Because I think so for in general, I think the astronauts are going to kind of be on the air when they're available. There's not really a schedule for that, but as far as the ARISS contacts, I think if you go to the ARISS website, generally they'll put out this press release about a week or so before the contact saying, here's your date, here's your time, here's what the astronauts are going to be saying, here's the downlink for it if you want to listen to them directly that way. And then also sometimes it'll have a link to a video of what you can do for watching the contact, say like a YouTube stream or something like that. So that's a way that you can see them or listen to them, however suits you. So yeah, feel free to ask any sorts of questions. I especially know a lot about filling out the process of the application. That's kind of what I was involved in, but just in general to whatever it takes through the process, I'm glad to answer those. Okay, so question from Todd here. How much time was there to interact with the ISS before it flew out of range? And so typically it's going to be about 10 minutes. I mean, it can vary depending on that, but the way it works is that the ISS contacts are deliberately scheduled so that you'll have passes of at least 10 minutes or so. Generally, it'll run for about 10 to 12 minutes, depending on what you've got. And so as you were seeing there in my presentation, you'll kind of hear radio noise for a little bit. The ISS is going to appear. You'll go for most of 10 minutes. Depending on conditions, things might end up fading out a little bit towards the end there, and so that's when your technical team's going to know that, and then you just kind of wrap that up. And yeah, it definitely moves quickly, so you want to be able to know how long the questions take to ask and all that, just kind of to get a feel for it. And that's also why we have students that ask multiple questions, so that every student gets to ask at least one question. What they don't want is for students to come up and not be able to ask their question, if that makes sense. Question from Douglas. So, are you involved in satellite communications on 440 at all? So, the answer to that is no. So I actually hadn't done too much satellite work prior to this, but it's definitely something that's worth looking into. Of course, with the ISS, it's, I believe, so I wasn't necessarily involved directly with the technical details of this, but I believe it's partially on 2 meter, partially on 70 that they split it. Either that or it's all on 2 meter, but I don't actually do too much of the other satellite communications work. But I definitely love to learn at some point. See, anybody have any other questions? Feel free to ask them. So just in case anybody is wondering here, this is definitely something that can seem daunting at first, but something that definitely something that can be a lot of fun once you get into it. So another question from Douglas. So were you able to talk to the ISS yourself? And so, no, actually, I've never personally done it. It's not something that I have a fairly basic setup, and it's never really worked out with me talking to astronauts. They kind of move quickly across the sky, and schedules might not line up with them. But I was able to help my team talk to them, and so that was a lot of fun to watch others talk to the ISS, even if I wasn't the one doing it. So definitely something I'd love to do at some point. And kind of to go off of that a little bit, it's just it's important to remember that astronauts are kind of busy, and they've got all these other activities they need to do, and so to be able to talk to astronauts like that, I just thought was a really neat experience when I worked through it with my school, and so hopefully that'll be a lot of fun. Just kind of getting to do that. So it's a really neat opportunity for us. Also, is there anything that I can help clarify from my presentation? I know I went through a lot, and this is just scratching the surface of it. So there's a lot more that you can get into with ARISS, and just I definitely don't know all the answers here, but I know enough that I can kind of point you in the right direction, make sure that you have what you need to be successful when you do ARISS as well. And definitely, you don't feel like you can't really do this, because really anybody can. You just need to kind of work towards it, fill out the application, and eventually you're going to get there. So it's something that definitely don't be afraid to have confidence in yourself and your ability to fill out this application, get it done. And it's a little bit, it's definitely something that you can get into. So another question from Douglas: is it possible for private operators to set up ISS QSOs? And as far as I know, that's not something that you could do. Just to talk with the ISS personally, I mean, you can certainly try to reach out to them, call out to them when they're in range. I would say, I don't know the exact number, but I think kind of in the middle latitudes, the ISS is probably going to pass over your area maybe once or twice a day. So there's lots of opportunities. Of course, they're all going to be informal, or and then I mean, more broadly, you can also get involved with the ISS SSTV transmissions, or the ISS repeater, and equipment like that. But getting a hold of the astronauts themselves can be a little bit difficult. And also, to kind of add to that just a little bit, and often the nature of this is just that if you can reach the ISS, there's a good chance that there's other operators who also want to try to reach the ISS, and so you might only have just a few seconds you can actually talk to an astronaut, assuming that they're even available. And then Douglas also asks that I assume AMSAT is the way to go, and I'd say probably that's what you'd want to go with. I mean, yeah, a lot of you can definitely get make connections through there, get transmissions, but then the automated parts of the ISS do work sort of like AMSAT, but it's more just a thing that the ISS really isn't in your part of the sky very long, so it makes it a little bit difficult. That said, if you really do want to get yourself into a QSO with the ISS, then one thing you can do is kind of lead this effort from the technical side. Say you get your local school involved or something like that, and then maybe depending on how things go, you might end up being the person who actually gets to make initial contact with the ISS, or you get to actually be the radio operator. That could be something that could be pretty cool as well. So even if it's just in the context of ARISS, it can be pretty cool, if you get to help out students like that. And then just on a couple other things to touch on. So it definitely can seem straightforward in this presentation, but just remember it's a fairly long process. The whole process from start to finish could take anywhere from about 12 to 18 months or so. So it's really something that as you go through, you'll just want to make sure you're working steadily on this, be in constant communication with your team. Just make sure that all of you are on the same page, make sure that all of you know what's going on, that you're taking care of everything when you need to. So it's a lot to take care of, but definitely communication would be the biggest thing. It was really helpful for my team, and yeah. Okay, we've got another question here from John. So, do you know if the astronauts still communicate by packet radio? I'm not entirely sure, but you'd have to look on that. Let me just look here. I think if I go to the ARISS website, I should be able to see here. So actually, something that's really helpful is if you go to the ARISS website, and that'll give you a place where you have the ARISS website, by the way, is ariss.org. So you can go to the general contacts, and it looks like they do have a packet digipeater that they use right now, but anyways, it's so yeah, if you want to do that, then that's definitely an option. I don't think that the astronauts communicate directly themselves anymore, but I'm not an expert on all the details here. You have to check the ARISS website, so they'd have the most up-to-date information on equipment changes and things like that. Thanks for your question. Hopefully that answers it. and something I don't think I mentioned this in my presentation, but something that can be really helpful is if you look up past ARISS contacts. So something that's especially helpful is the ARISS website. The ARISS website is helpful, give you links to all sorts of resources. But then also if you go to the ARISS YouTube channel, so a lot of schools will host their contacts on that channel to make kind of a central place for such things. And so you can see a lot of them, see the sort of questions they asked, see what sort of people they brought in, all that. And then also if you have other questions, if you go also on the ARISS YouTube channel, there are several webinars that go through, here's how you do this, this, and this in order to get your program rolling. I believe also during the contact window, so starting in October probably, is something that they'll put out webinars where you can actually go live with them, ask them all the questions, and they're much more, they would be more likely to be experts on this sort of thing than I am. So, I mean, I worked on this about 18 months ago is when I filled out the application, and so it's definitely changed since then. It's a slightly different process, mostly the same though, and so you'll definitely want to talk to them to get the most updated information. And they've also got things like a proposal guide, so that's a step-by-step thing of how you go through and fill out your proposal. Thanks for your question, John. It's definitely making contact with the space station definitely sounds like it would have been cool, but that was a little bit before my time, so I definitely like to get into the more ISS and satellite work in the future. It's just something that I haven't gotten to that much. Feel free to keep the questions coming. I'm glad to answer any of them as much as I can. If not, I can kind of point you in the right direction. Definitely don't know all the answers, but glad to help you out, get you going there. And yeah, it's whatever question you have. No question is a bad question, so feel free to ask. Yeah, definitely. However you're feeling about this, you can't really go wrong putting in your application, even if you don't get accepted, just because. Yeah, I don't know what the exact number of schools is applying for it, but something that if you don't apply, you're definitely not going to get it, and this is just something that's a really neat opportunity. It's not something you get to do too much in regular ham radio operation. Definitely not something that students regularly get to do, of just getting to talk to an astronaut, getting to watch their friends talk to an astronaut. So it's definitely worth trying out, seeing if you get it. And then just another general thing to keep in mind as you go through this process is, so yes, it is competitive, and yes, the ARISS group wants to make sure that you have a strong application, but just remember that once you're into this, ARISS really wants to see you succeed. So the most important thing is making sure that the contact goes smoothly, and so it's not like they're going to do the work for you, but they'll help provide you all the resources that you need so that you can be successful, and so that you can have a successful event. So you definitely don't have to figure this all out yourself. And yeah, if you end up having more questions or you're unsure about things as all this goes on, there's definitely help and resources available for you. Feel free to keep putting questions in the chat. It's really exciting to see that you all have these questions, and however I can help you feel more confident about the process is great. So don't be afraid to put them in the chat. All right, so I don't. If nobody else has questions, then we'll kind of start wrapping things up here. So I'm just going to give just a couple more minutes that we can do to see your last chance to ask some questions if you have any. So feel free to, and just a few minutes are going to end the stream here. So now's your last chance. If you have anything for me, anything I can help clarify, just anything that would be helpful for you as you start this process. Well, in that case, then, if nobody has any other questions, and then I'm just going to close things out here. So just as a reminder, you should be able to watch this for the next 30 days during the on-demand period for the expo. Feel free to check out some of the other presentations. There's a lot of cool topics that they're talking about, and thanks once again and for coming to my presentation. I really appreciate it, and yeah, hopefully I'll get to hear about your school or whatever organization you were involved in, getting into an ARISS contact or doing something else cool like that. So I think it'll be really exciting. So thanks for joining me today, and have a great day. Hopefully you get to see some of the other presentations as well. Bye for now.